Hi everybody, this is TheHande and welcome to another HeCast. And today, on this HeCast, I am finally, I guess, sort of reviewing the Masters of the Universe Revelation series. And if you have, this is a very belated review and overview of the series as a whole. And so I'll be giving you a rundown of what exactly the Masters of the Universe Revelation is, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and as it turns out, I have found out that there's, just today, as I'm recording this, I found out that there's in fact a sequel series in the works that's called Masters of the Universe Revolution. I did not realize that was a thing, but that's going to be kind of a running theme as we get to the meat of things, that Masters of the Universe Revelation really did not turn out to be what I thought it was for a multitude of reasons. And at first, I think I do owe a little bit of an explanation to people why it has taken me so long to review Masters of the Universe Revelation, because I have been very, very late to the party on this one, and I recognize that fully. So in case you don't know what Masters of the Universe Revelation is, it is the second of 3 animated series that Netflix has produced, based on the Masters of the Universe toy line, the He-Man franchise, if you will. The first one was, of course, the She-Ra Netflix series, which I have a bunch of videos and other podcasts on. I've covered all 5 seasons of that show. And the third one is the CGI animated show, which I have watched both seasons, or maybe they're both 2 halves of the first season. I'm actually not entirely sure, but after watching the first half, I did make a little video where I talked about the character designs in that one. So, what is Masters of the Universe Revelation? Let's get to that. Let's get through that, and then I'll explain why it took me so long to finally watch the whole thing. So, Masters of the Universe Revelation is set on Eternia. It starts with a climactic battle between He-Man and the forces of good against Skeletor and the forces of evil. In this big battle, Skeletor manages to breach Castle Grayskull, and both He-Man and Skeletor are killed, and all the magic in Eternia disappears, and Teela is suddenly revealed He-Man's secret identity as Prince Adam. She's so disgusted by this that she actually gives up being captain of the guard and leaves. And the story then picks up a couple of years afterwards. Eternia's in a real shitty state because there's no more magic. And then Teela is tasked to going to the afterlife to find Adam, because only Adam can help bring back magic to Eternia. So they go to the afterlife. Preternia, or Subternia and Preternia is the 2 whatever. And then that's the first half of the series. The series is only 10 episodes, and the first half of the episode is the whole trip to the underworld. And, Adam and Teela also get to deal with the character baggage of Teela not knowing Adam's secret identity. And then the second half picks up when Adam is brought back to life, and so is Skeletor, and Skeletor immediately backstabs everybody and gains the powers of Grayskull, and then the second half of the show deals with that. So that's as short of a summary as I can give without any spoilers. I'm gonna just, give a blanket warning at this point. If you haven't seen the show, there's gonna be a bunch of spoilers here. Like, you should definitely, you probably have already watched this, because people have periodically asked me about my opinions on Masters of the Universe Revelation, and unfortunately, I've had to constantly just tell them that I have not watched the whole thing, so I have reserved my opinion up until this point. So, first of all, it took me a long time just to see the first half of this show, and then when I watched it, I was disappointed to discover that it was the first half of the series. I seriously thought the series was only going to be 5 episodes long, because that's how long mini-series typically are, and that's what I was being, I had assumed this thing was going to be. It was going to be just a short 5-episode mini-series, and then they left us on a cliffhanger there, and then they made another 5 episodes. Okay, so legitimately, and this is true, I've mentioned this so many times, this is the reason why all my, when I was talking about the Netflix She-Ra show, why all my videos and podcasts are so were always appearing so late. I do not have Netflix. So I do not have the privilege of just, on my just casually watching stuff off of Netflix. And typically, if I watch anything off of Netflix anyway, I like to do it with people. So my sister has Netflix. Whenever there's anything on Netflix I want to check out, I want to check it out with her. Because I like watching people. I like watching stuff with friends. And and I was actually going to watch the first season as it was coming out. But the problem was that the first half of the series came out last year around about this time. I actually don't remember the dates anymore specifically, but it was very close to when I was about to move. And that messed up my chances of actually seeing it. Also, because I was kind of running the gauntlet on finishing my 60-second He-Man reviews on the New Adventures of He-Man. So I was much more focused on getting that thing done because I saw the finish line and I thought, oh hell yeah, I want to get this thing done before the summer ends because I was then starting a new job, and so I wouldn't have had time to focus on it that much. So that was the reason why there was such a delay for me watching the first half of the show. And then I thought, well, shit, now I have to wait for the second half. And the second half came out already last year. But yeah, I have just not had the opportunity. And I've tried to get a chance to watch it. Now, I'm just coming back from a week-long trip to see my sister, my brother-in-law, and also my friend Ville that we've done a couple of videos ago, a long time ago. And during that time, I had, a little bit of downtime of just hanging around their house. I decided, what the hell, it's only 5 episodes. Let's finally watch this thing to the end so I can finally get this fucking podcast done because, because it's taken me so goddamn long. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to go into every nitty-gritty thing about this. Also because it's been such a long while since I saw the first 5 episodes, I might be forgetting some crucial plot details here. So I'm not going to discuss every character because if I did, and that's actually one of my complaints here, is like we'll be here all fucking day because there were quite a lot of characters. But the main ones that the story focuses on were Adam, Teela, Skeletor, in the second half, Evil-Lyn, and Orko a lot for the first half as well. And like I said, and yes, also, not having the luxury of just watching it whenever I felt like it and then picking the time to just do the review for it, it's also because there has been some negative backlash towards this series. I think it would be unfair if I didn't acknowledge that. Having said that, I don't get where any of the hatred is coming from. The show, there's always going to be versions of He-Man people like, versions of He-Man people don't. There's clearly a segment of the He-Man fan community that really doesn't like Masters of the Universe Revelation for whatever reason. I get the feeling I've been led astray on a few things that people have said about this show, but I also admit that I have had some misinformation myself because people need to remember that this thing didn't come out, it came out in 2021, but it has been in the making for quite a while. I think I remember all the way back in 2019, maybe even 2018, hearing about this thing. It's that old. So this thing had a long gestation period. And the original, and I don't remember where I heard this from, maybe from some interview or something. Originally, I heard, the thing that I originally heard, that Masters of the Universe Revelation was supposed to be a sequel series to the Filmation He-Man show. And then when they released the first art pieces, I realized, okay, the art style's a bit different, so maybe it's not trying to be too faithful, or maybe that's just a stylistic choice that they did. But then within minutes of watching the show, it becomes obvious, okay, no, this is not set in the same continuity as the Filmation series. Amongst other things, obvious clues being that there's no She-Ra, no Hordak, or Horde for that matter, so except the very, very end, there was a little bit of a Horde thing there. But yeah, so I was a bit misdirected in that, and I'll talk about why that kind of interfered with my enjoyment of the show later on. I was honestly thinking about doing this in a way where I would I've tried to, because when I talk about the positives and negatives of anything in well, any relating to anything, but especially with He-Man things, I've recently tried to start with the negatives and end on the positives because I want to end on a positive note. But I decided it made more sense from a presentation point of view to just start with the positives, the things about the show that I genuinely enjoyed. And the number one thing is the animation. It's 2D hand draw animated. Now, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against 3D animation. I like the CG animated He-Man show. If you saw that video that I made about it, it should be pretty obvious that, I'm not prejudiced towards the animation style in this case. But the animation in this series, absolutely fucking fantastic. There's one or two episodes where you can kind of tell they were, trying to save a little bit of money. There's a lot of stuff in the episodes where characters are just talking, which is something that I'll talk about when we get to the negative side of things. But the action scenes look fantastic. In fact, the thing I actually think, I wish there would have been more action scenes, because the show looks genuinely really good. I love the art direction. That's my second point. And the art direction, especially because the characters really do look like themselves for the most part. And I especially love the fact that they were not afraid to have He-Man have his hair just fall down the sides of his head. It's not quite the classic polka cut, but it's very close. They avoided the temptation of just giving He-Man spiky hair, as in the 1987 Masters of the Universe movie with Dolph Lundgren, or the early 2000s Mike Young Productions He-Man. So I do like that to some extent they stayed very faithful to, let's say, the original characters, the toy designs and what have you. And I think it gave the show a very nice visual style. They definitely were not afraid of also just revamping the designs. When we get the time skip to the future, when Eternia has gone to shit. I'm not gonna lie, not all of the character redesigns were to my tastes. Actually, a funny thing. This is a little thing, but what kind of drove me up the wall was the fact that Evil-Lyn for most of the show has very long hair, and that to me feels wrong. Again, I'm saying a lot of my dislikes when we get to the parts of the show that I don't like. I think it kind of always just boils down to me. I'm such a big fan of the Filmation show, so when things conflict with that. But I just love the idea, which comes from The Witch and the Warrior, which is the only episode where we saw Evil-Lyn without her helmet, that Evil-Lyn just has very short, spiky hair. And I think it looks really good on her. So that's why them trying to give Evil-Lyn long hair seemed like a weak choice. But to be fair, Evil-Lyn has a couple of hairstyles in the show. It's not just the one. So I'm not saying and I'm not going to say a hairstyle is going to ruin a character for me or anything like that. That's ridiculous. But like I said, I love the little touches, like, just the fact that He-Man has the kind of flat, long hair and things like that. And characterizations, I thought, like, Cringer was kind of interesting. Again, it's very obvious when you see Cringer that, this is not Filmation's Cringer, but that's not a bad thing. Orko looked really cool. I like that. There are moments. They have definitely lifted some elements from the Mike Young Productions version of He-Man, but I do like that they kind of kept it, because in the Mike Young Productions He-Man, I think there was too much of an emphasis of trying to make everybody look cool, and it had some kind of unintentionally funny results, like Stratos being barefoot. That's like, come on. Now, I will say the tone of Masters of the Universe Revelation is a lot more serious and dark, and I think that was the point. I don't want to begrudge the show for trying to be a more serious take on He-Man, because that was clearly the intention. The kind of impetus, and the thing is when I thought that this was supposed to be the follow-up to the Filmation show, the idea here was, I knew that it was going to somehow focus on Teela, that Adam or He-Man was somehow out of the picture. I didn't know he was literally going to be dead, but that's literally the premise of the show now. But the idea was that this was supposed to be kind of oh god, the words escape me. Resolve, yeah. This show was meant to kind of resolve those interesting little plot threads that are weaved throughout the show, but never really addressed, like the fact that Tila is the sorceress's daughter. Now, the fact that this is not the Filmation continuity immediately presents a lot of problems with it, and especially then later in the series they show some flashbacks to some certain events that also make me raise a lot of question marks. Again, like I said, a lot of these things that really kind of irked me about the show is the fact that there's so many inconsistencies with the Filmation portrayal. But I realize this is not supposed to be the Filmation portrayal, but that's the thing that I'm kind of always reflecting back on, and that kind of stuff slightly annoys me. But we'll put a pin on that. We'll come back to that. Now, the show's very serious. It wasn't devoid of comedy completely. There were jokes. Some of the jokes were very, very subtle. Like when Fisto shows up and says, like, Skeletor, I'd love to fist him, and, stuff like that. It's some of the jokes were not very funny. I was surprised that in the very final episode, there were actually a couple of really funny comedy bits. So there was a little bit of levity, and I like that. And actually, that's the thing. I almost wish, maybe they shouldn't have overdone it or anything, but I really do wish they would have had a little bit more comedy, because the show got really, really dark in places, and that made me really, really that was kind of one of the things that I disliked about the show on the overall. I'll get back to that in a minute, why it bothers me. Next couple of things are not, all out negatives, but they're things that I either started out not really enjoying, but I kind of see the value in later, and some things that I was a little bit, maybe not let down by, maybe a little bit disappointed by, but things that kind of evolved over time. So, I mentioned before, I mentioned already during this podcast, that this show had a lot of toy characters. The very first episode, the big battle scene with the villains and heroes, they crammed every fucking Masters of the Universe toy into the background. We see countless toy character cameos throughout the series. We actually saw towards the end, there are a couple of interesting ones, I'll get back to. But this is the thing, when I saw that first episode, that was like the number one first thing that started to, like, get me annoyed. Like, I can tell that they just went through the entire back catalog of He-Man characters and just slammed them all into the background. Now, that does answer the question, like, I suppose this show is trying to be a follow-up to the Toy Lines lore, which in its sense, that if I could have said that was the end all, yes, this is what happened. This is where this show is supposed to be placed. That would have been fine, but like I said, there's no She-Ra, there's no Horde. That means it can't be the Toy Lines canon, but it sort of is. So, but the thing is, like, I hated that they kept having those little cameos, because I've said this before. I've said this about the original Filmation He-Man. I've said this about the original Filmation She-Ra. I've said this about the She-Ra Netflix show. I don't like it when they shoehorn the toy characters in just for a quick, dirty cameo. And especially in those old shows, it's because it was done to sell toys. It's like Snout Spout is not a character, he's a toy. Clawbur in the New Adventures of He-Man, the same thing. The Clawbur and Battlebird, Clawbur is not a character, Battlebird is not a vehicle. They're toys. Those things only exist in the show because they needed to push those toys. But in hindsight, when I start to think about it, those cameos, they're fairly innocuous. Like, they didn't, at least it wasn't like, it didn't get to the point where they tried to give every single one of the characters voiceovers. Scarecrow, still, I think, no, fucking Scarecrow. Are you kidding me? Did you have to shoehorn that character in? This is the way I feel about Stinkor in the Mike Young Productions He-Man as well. That's a character that they shoehorned into that one just because he wasn't in the original Filmation show. And it's like, Stinkor is not a good character. Just don't. Come on. But anyway, so at first I was really annoyed with all the toy cameos, but then at the very, very end, like the final couple of episodes were actually some of my favorites, and specifically because that's where a lot of stuff happened. But also, like I said, this is also, like I said, this is kind of like the toy series lore, but there also is clearly kind of an amalgamation of all the different He-Man media. So there are little nods to the Mike Young Productions He-Man, and there was a very subtle nod in the very beginning of the series to the Masters of the Universe live action movie. Like, they keep talking about Eternia being in the center of the universe. That was a thing that came from that movie, not the toy line. And in the very final episode, we had cameos from Blade and Pig Boy, who are from the live action movie, and who were, made then part of the toy line as well. And that was, it's silly, but that's the reason I like it. So that made me come around to the toy characters a little bit. I still think, and I stand by this, that I think the best way to do a He-Man or She-Ra show or anything is, like, don't put in too many characters. Pick like the 5 to 6 best characters and focus on them, because that's the way you write a good show. Not by trying to just, throw the kitchen sink at the audience and everything. It's okay to have, like, a one-off villain maybe, or one-off adversary or something, but, at the end of the day, you do have to build up these characters. And that's the thing that I get when I see all those characters running around in the background. And especially if you're not familiar with Masters of the Universe, you have no idea who the hell these guys are. Why are they here? Who gives a shit? So that's where the problem kind of comes in for me. The other thing is the all-star voice cast, and this is something that I was honestly very excited about when they announced the voice cast, because there are some really big hitters in the voice cast, including Alan Oppenheimer. He actually got to do Mossman. Mossman was voiced by Lou Scheimer originally, and unfortunately, of course, he's been dead for a good number of years now. But so I love that Alan Oppenheimer came back. I'm kind of sad that Mossman really only had dialogue in his first episode appearance. And he does appear at the very end, but doesn't get to say anything. And but the longer it went on, and then Kevin Conroy was Merman. If you don't know who Kevin Conroy is, he was Batman in the 90s Batman the Animated Series. I don't think that he got used very well. I think, Merman was kind of a throwaway character in this. And, not to say, I don't think any of the sort of celebrity all-star voices were bad by any means. The actress who plays Buffy the Vampire Slayer was Tila. Oh God, I'm blanking out on her name. She was okay. She was good. She did a fine job in her role. I like the voice actor who played Adam and He-Man. I forget his name. Sorry, I should have probably looked it up before I started recording, but I'm not going to do it. But the thing is, like, the number one thing that I think everybody was looking forward to was Mark Hamill as Skeletor. And Skeletor is out of commission for the first half of the show. He's in the first episode, is in the 5th episode, and I was a little let down. I was expecting Mark Hamill to, like, voice him with a lot more gusto at that point in the show, and he just sounded very throaty and kind of tired as well. Like, it's like, this is not what I was looking forward to. Now, I will say, like I said, I do think Mark Hamill, in the second half of the show where he had a lot more dialogue, I think he eventually found the character's voice, and I do think that he gave a pretty good performance, but it was still a bit of a letdown from what I expected. And also, like I said, they had this all-star voice cast. I kind of, the problem with having too many characters, I think, is just very evident. Like, I think they just, they stretched them out too thin. All right, I looked it up. So Sarah Michelle Gellar. So yes, I think Sarah Michelle Gellar actually did do a very good job as Tila. And Chris Wood was the actor who played Adam. I don't know him from anything, I'm sorry to say, but oh yeah, and Alicia Silverstone as Queen Marlena. I like that. That was she did a good Queen Marlena, especially during the second half of the show. All right, so those are the positives. Now we're going to have to move into the negatives. And the number one, and that is the thing that I've kind of written down because I've tried to kind of, explain this. So, again, I realized this show was meant to be, a lot more darker, more serious. way more so than the original Filmation show. And I realize that it's not, I realize it is not, meant to be a continuation of the Filmation show. That I get. So in that, I don't want to seem like I'm too harsh on it for it being what it is. But there was a lingering question in my mind that I just never really managed to get an answer for, no matter how much I look back on the show and try to wonder what. And that's the purpose of the show and the setting. Both of those were a mystery to me. Now, if this had been the follow-up to the Filmation show, then the idea would have been that this is the kind of finale, the long-awaited kind of climax point that this show has been kind of building up to. The dramatic arc comes to head. Skeletor, He-Man dies, Skeletor dies, Power of Grayskull needs to be transferred to Tila. These are all good plot elements. But when it's not the Filmation show, we don't really know what version. And like I said, it's not really the toy lore. It sort of is, but it really isn't. That causes this, thing where it's kind of like the ending of a story without a beginning. And it makes me wonder, was it too much to throw in like a couple of more like flashbacks or things? I mean, they did do it. Don't get me wrong. They did do. I remember in the Merman episode they had a couple of those as well. But they didn't really. They didn't set the picture very clearly. But I thought if this was going to be the finale of the kind of the finale end of one of the He-Man continuities, and it was going to be just a one-time deal, like I was okay with it. Okay, it's going to be a bit dark, it's a bit melodramatic, to be honest. But I'm okay. They want to go out with a bang. That's going to be great. And now I hear that there's another show that they're making. Like, for fuck's sake, what is the point of this? I was not expecting this to be the launch pad to yet another cartoon. Can you not just reach the narrative arc and just call it a day there? I mean, I get it. Lots of people must have watched this. That has to be the reason why they're making the sequel series. And don't get me wrong, I'm not begrudging their success, because I remember when the first She-Ra Netflix show came out, and I had no idea that if it was gonna be successful or not, and then it turned out to be very successful, and I'm really happy for them. But yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing that kept nagging me about whenever we get whatever little plot breadcrumbs. I'm not trying to say here that there's only one true version of these characters. No, of course not. That's ridiculous. There's been many different versions of He-Man, many different plot interpretations. But the characterizations that I'm kind of expecting, they're just like the tiniest bit off, and that made it very difficult for me to engage with the show. So I'm already saying the thing that I'm going to say at the end anyway, that this show maybe wasn't my cup of tea, but I don't want to begrudge anybody who did like it. It's just that I don't really get the setting. I watched the whole thing and I'm still not sure. Okay, but the second thing about the I do have to say, be critical about the pacing. So the story is very dark. There's a lot of character baggage. Did we really need 3 whole episodes of the characters just bearing their hearts out in dialogue scenes? Really, you couldn't have condensed that into one single episode. That's the thing. I feel that the storytelling in this show was just way too slow. They really needed to get to the point a lot better. Like, I would have been happy with not even 1/3, 1/4 of the amount of dialogue that we had between the characters. And I get it that they're trying to build them up, but seriously, yeah, no, that was the number one. Like when I'm having to look at the clock, because I'm thinking like, Jesus Christ, how much longer are you gonna keep talking and something's gonna actually happen? Like, I get it that they're trying to, but the point where it started to get a little ridiculous for me was like, did we really need to drag Marlena and Randor's marriage problems into this as well? Like, that seems like the story that nobody wanted to know to me. So, and because it is very dark, that's the other thing why the slow pacing just hurts. It's like agony. It's like twisting the knife. the characters are miserable. They're feeling bad. But do you have to make the audience feel miserable and bad because we're having to watch this for so long? So that was my thing. Like, like I said, there was a little bit of levity here and there. They could have done with a whole lot more. They could have like punctuated stuff a little bit more humanly rather than just lay it all on the audience for 3 straight episodes. Like, Jesus Christ, come on. Oh yeah, about the comedy, I do have to say though, one of my favorite, funniest bits was the way during the second half of the show, how Evil-Lyn tricks Skeletor into giving her the power sword by pretending that she wants to have sex with him. I mean, that was so ridiculous, but I couldn't help but to laugh. It was so juvenile and dumb. But I kind of like that solution in the end. Now, having said that, and I guess that'll serve as our segue to the final negative point that I have about this show, was that I really didn't like the Nihilist Evil-Lyn that we got in this version. So I like the fact that they did, explore the character of Evil-Lyn. I kind of like the fact that she and Orko, actually had a lot in common, and they talked about that. But during the second half, when Evil-Lyn sees like the vastness of the universe and suddenly begins to think like everything is meaningless and something like that, I know I said that there's no wrong version of these characters, but that really that really did grind my gears. Like, that's not the Evil-Lyn that I know, because the Evil-Lyn that I know is a lot more determined and has a much clearer sense of purpose. And I get it why it had to happen. It had to happen in order for us to get the big finale. Like I said, the last couple of episodes were my favorites, so if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have had the finale, but I really did not like that. I did not really like the fact that Evil-Lyn resigns the universe to destruction because she sees no point in it. That was something that I felt was like, that more than anything, I think, undermined her character in the show. I really did not like that. And, so, because because I'll admit, Teela got a little annoying as well. I think she was a little bit like, she was understandably angry at the start of the show, but I think during those first couple of episodes, I think they were hammering the point home a little bit, like how betrayed she felt. It's like, the kingdom's at stake. Can you let it go for like 5 seconds so that we can make the story progress a little bit? So, but I think at the end of the day, Teela's character arc, was fulfilled, and it was actually really good, and they handled it with a lot of tact. With Evil-Lyn, that was the number one thing that I was left with a nagging feeling. That was the number one thing that I could not get over. Like, she can't be that, she cannot be this much of a wet sponge that, the vastness of the cosmos suddenly makes her into a homicidal psychopath, more or less. So that was a little bit, that was a lot. That was not that was by far the number one thing that I disliked about Masters of the Universe Revelation. It was the reason I kind of wanted to leave it at the end here. So, summation time. Okay, so, as I've already alluded to, there were things about the show I liked. There were things about the show I didn't like. I don't know how to feel about the fact that there's going to be another set of these coming out. I'm going to say this version of He-Man was a little too heavy and dark for me. I am I'm reaching the age where I'm more and more appreciative of when He-Man's a bit goofy and silly. I, of course, love, and I have highlighted before in the He-Man episode reviews, when the He-Man story writing could get serious and could handle heavy topics. But 10 episodes of it, well, let's say 8.5 episodes of it, and then like 2 action-packed episodes of He-Man. That's a ratio that I'm not really happy with. Like, I respect what they were trying to do. I definitely respect what the showrunners were trying to do. They were really, really trying hard to get like a serious dark He-Man interpretation. Little too dark, a little too serious. That's my problem. Tone it down, a couple of notches, then you'll be good, I think. I mean, I'm gonna watch, don't get me wrong, I'm gonna watch that follow-up series. I'm definitely curious for it, but don't expect me to come back to Master of the Universe Revelation anytime. It's the same reason why, I'm not gonna come back to, Mike Young Productions is the one that people have requested of me, but I have no easy way of watching. Maybe if one of these days the official He-Man YouTube channel starts uploading those episodes, I don't think that'll happen anytime soon. And yeah, but, if I find anything else worthy to talk about, maybe I'll bring it up again, but for now, I'm good. I'm good on Masters of the Universe Revelation. But let's see what Masters of the Universe Revolution is going to be like. Thank you. I hope you listened to the end of this, yet again, a very rambly Heatcast. I'm Hanno Dandamäkinen. Until next time, I have the power, so can you. He-Man.